Chapter 3. Sugary was pacing. "You're late," she said, "and early. The police haven't come, and the Crandalls are still awake." Spike and I leapt from the elevator to the floor. It was 10:27. From where we were standing, in the darkness of the kitchen, I could hear the faint burbling of a television commercial, and see a faint spattering of dust-moted air. "They're in the living room," she said, and looked quizzically over at Spike, who elbowed me in the ribs. "Sugary," I said, catching on. "This is Spike." Sugary merely nodded. Spike was left standing with an over-anxious smile and a half-extended paw as the kitten looked at the clock. "It's 10:28, she said. "What do we do now?" I suggested we all stop looking at the clock and take a look at the scene of the crime. "The workshop?" she said. "Wherever the necklace was." "The workshop," she said. We followed her through the kitchen, Sugary's nails going click, click, click against the gloss of linoleum, and out to a carpeted floor. It belonged to a dining room. Table, 4 chairs, and a glass-doored cabinet with 3 narrow shelves. There were candlesticks in it and a couple of platters and a big shiny bowl. "Silver," I said to Spike. "Silver plate," he said. "Tin." I glanced at a painting that was hung at the side of the door. "A Picasso," I observed. "A reproduction," Spike announced. Sugary cocked her head. "Are you snobs," she said, "or what?" "We're detectives," I told her. "Oh," she said thoughtfully. "Well, here we are." Where we were was in the workshop. It was part of the dining room. The room was divided by a floor-to-ceiling cabinet with several dozen drawers. Only one drawer was open. Near it, against the wall and underneath the window, was a felt-covered table and a striped canvas chair. On the chair was a postcard addressed to the Crandalls. "Dear Jack and Marie." "Is that a clue?" Sugary said. I ignored her entirely and looked at the cabinet, the one open drawer. "Did Mr. Crandall touch the drawers, or is this the way you found it?" "The way we found it," Sugary said. "Mr. Crandall said we shouldn't touch anything at all until we talked to the police." She cocked her pretty head. "Is that a clue?" she said. "Yes." I looked around the room again and followed my own thought. The cat burglar seemed to know exactly where to go. To exactly which drawer. He hadn't taken the candlesticks, the platters, or the bowl. Because he knew they weren't silver? Or because he only wanted the jade? Standing there thinking, I was suddenly distracted by something I merely felt. Sensed is more the word. The room had an undertaste, an odor I couldn't place. But whatever it was only in the workshop and not in the rest of the room. I turned back to Spike. "Take a breath," I said carefully, "and tell me what you smell." He sniffed again. "I smell something I've never smelled." "Can you smell it in the dining room?" Spike went to check. Now Sugary took a sniff. "Is that familiar to you?" I said. First she shook her head. "It's nothing Mr. Crandall ever uses in his work, and it certainly isn't food." She took another breath. "But I think I've smelled it before." "Where?" I said. "When?" Frowning, deep in thought, she seemed to focus on the air. "This is hard," she said. "The smell is so faint it's hardly there. I mean, if you hadn't mentioned it." Spike cut her off. "Not in the dining room, not in the kitchen. Now what?" he said. "Now we go to the terrace." Sugary said we couldn't. The only way to the terrace was to go through the living room, and the Crandalls were in the living room. "And not only that, it's got a major white carpet, and we wouldn't exactly blend." "There's another way," I said. and moved to the felt table and up to the open window. Another quick move, and I was standing on the ledge. If you'd call it a ledge. It wasn't much wider than the shadow of a snail. My feet had to stand on a line, single file. Did that stop me? Not me. If I had had any brains, I'd be teaching mathematics instead of chasing thieves, so I didn't even flinch. I stood on the window ledge and gazed at the night. Out there below me was a hot toy city with dark toy secrets. Small men and women the size of tin soldiers paraded down the street. Cars, like caterpillars, slept beneath the trees. This was scary, but fun. A prickle of excitement exploded in my head and then spread through my body. It was great to be alive. I hunkered back for leverage and looked at the terrace rail, a strip of wrought iron at the other side of the world, about 5 feet away. And then I was airborne, defier of gravity. My muscles taut, my body stretched to its limits, my fast blood pulsing with the ecstasy of flight. I landed gently and closed my eyes with a grin. Eagle, king of the hill. "Ready or not," Spike yelled at me suddenly, "here I come." He whooped like Tarzan and jetted into the air. "Kaboom!" he said as he landed, then called back to Sugary. "Ready, set, go!" Sugary didn't move. She sat on the window, half in, half out, looking fearfully down at the street. I've never been on a ledge before," she said, and her voice really quivered. "I don't think I can do it." "Of course you can do it," I told her. "You're a cat." "I'm a house cat," she wailed. "And I'm also not a fool. You know, a lot of cats die from taking leaps out of windows, and I'll tell you something else. That line about a cat's always landing on her feet? Forget it, Sam. I leapt from the refrigerator once, and you know where I landed? I landed on my—" "Sugary," I snapped. "This isn't a refrigerator." "You're telling me." "It's an emergency," I said. At least it made her move. She gave it another beat, and then slowly, uncertainly, lifted her feet to the ledge, and then stood, tense and shivering and staring down at the street. "Hey," I said, "don't look down. Look at me." She lifted her eyes again. "Sam?" "Just do it." It didn't take her long. She took a deep breath, and then rose off her legs, arcing gracefully like a dancer. For a moment, she was just a blonde blur in the air. Then she was standing, looking dazed, next to Spike. "You're a natural," I said. She offered me a smile of such deep, glowing joy, if I remembered slowly it could last me till Christmas. "I loved it," she said. "Uh-huh. Let's go to work." The sliding glass door to the living room was open. The television flickered its pale beam of light onto overturned flower pots and shards of terracotta and the night's single victim, a clump of chrysanthemums withering in the heat. I examined the edge of the door. It was framed in aluminum and set on aluminum tracks. No scratches. No dents. No evidence of tampering. Interesting, I thought. So the burglar didn't pick any locks. He had a key. And there was that smell again, faint but distinctive. The scent of the burglar? I had to check it out. I looked at the Crandalls, sitting stunned on a dark green corduroy sofa. A red-headed woman with a tight, sad expression on a round, pleasant face. The dark-haired man staring absently at the movie and chewing the edge of his nail. I looked at the white carpet. I looked at the glass lamp. I looked up at Spike. That table in the corner, the one with the glass lamp, would you say it's simply old, or would you say it's antique? "I'd say," he said, squinting, "I'd say It's very possibly a genuine Sheraton. 1830 or perhaps 31. Sugary? I nodded. Go jump on that table. Not that one, she said. Oh, I couldn't. It's not allowed. I know it's not, I said, which is why I want you to do it. It's called a diversion. You divert their attention while I get into the room. Alone? Spike said. Right, your assignment is to check the rest of the house. Check for what? For that smell. Sugary turned around and leapt silently back to the window. Sugary, you're on again. Ready, set, go. Everything happened at once. Sugary was on the table, the Crandalls were on their feet, a lot of, Sugary, get off there! And I was into the room. I did what I had to do and ended up in the workshop. Spike trotted in. Nope, he said, nothing. I didn't smell a thing except peanut butter, socks, and Calvin Klein's obsession. Right, I said. Figures. What figures? Sugary slunk into the room. She glowered in my direction. Boy, I hope it was worth it. I've never been so embarrassed. It was worth it. I grinned at her. Here's what we've learned. The burglar had a key. He let himself in and went straight to the workshop. Directly to the workshop. His smell's on the carpet just as plain as an arrow. So? She said. So, he knew exactly what he wanted and exactly where it was. Meaning? I don't know, except he's been here before. Before? Sugary said. And before I could explain it, the doorbell was ringing, the Crandalls were at the door, and a couple of policemen were standing in the hall.